into what is disability before I go into this whole aspect of neurodiversity. So quickly with the stats, right now in Canada, 24% of the population has a disability of some sort. So that's almost 25%. There's at least a few of us in this room. And again, you can look around as you wish. You don't know what somebody's disability might be. So we have this concept as well as hidden or invisible disability, which I'll get to in a minute. But I want to talk about a bit about our perceptions of disability. There's a concept of health, and then there's the medical diagnosis. And often when we think of somebody having a medical diagnosis or a disability, automatically we think they're not healthy. And that's just not the case. So one great example is you can have diabetes, and you can have very unmanaged, uncontrolled diabetes. Perhaps you're not taking your pills, you're not taking your insulin, you're not watching your diet, you're not exercising. So you have, at that point, a medical diagnosis, and you also are unhealthy at the same time because your condition is not managed. Disabilities, I say, because I don't like that idea, because I find that if somebody starts talking to me after half an hour, you're going to realize that I'm a little bit different. She's a little bit weird. And you can't necessarily pinpoint what it is, but my disability will show up. My autism will show up at some point. But other examples, we have things like colorblindness. You don't know unless somebody tells you that they're colorblind. It could be cognitive or learning disabilities, it could be mental health, it could be substance use disorders, diabetes, like I said, and on and on. So again, that idea, that concept of we don't always know what's going on below the surface. And when we're talking about inclusion, it's not just about including people for the future. We're future-proofing your businesses when we talk about the fact that right now, there are employees right now who are struggling or who have so-called hidden disabilities they have not disclosed, and they still need support. And the thing with disability, and any disability, all of us at some point are going to be disabled. The most common acquired disability in Canada is vision loss. It's very easy to have an eye injury and lose your vision. The second most common disability in Canada is mobility and pain, chronic pain. You don't see somebody who's in pain necessarily. They're taking the painkillers, they're showing up at work, they're trying to get through their day. You don't know that. So let's look at some of our strengths. We do have a lot of great strengths. One, I would say we can start with hyper-focus. This is kind of a list that is not just, the spacing was bad. Anyway, that's not just specific to autism. It's all neurodivergence that I kind of put together. But when we're talking about working in the mining industry, some of the skills that we can bring to the table, just the natural way that our brains work, these are some of our natural strengths. Not to say that every one of us has all of these, but just some of these things that can be used to the benefit of the mining industry. So again, the hyper-focus, I highlighted some of them because of some of the way that some of them that are in me. I'm really good at finding bugs in code despite the fact I'm not a coder. I don't need to know the computer language to look at the code and the errors jump out at my face at me. And it's the same thing with grammar. With language, I look at a page of text, and similar, like I just noticed now that the spacing comes out funny. But what happens is that's not useful at the social side when somebody hands me a paper and says, Kelly, can you look at this? And I go, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. And they go, how did you do that so fast? And it just happens to be my skill. I can't control it. It comes out. And I don't necessarily need to know the grammar. I don't need to know the language in order to find the bug. And that's because my brain is looking at patterns. And it automatically finds the logic in things and finds when something doesn't fit that logic. Aside from those strengths, I always say what's good for one is good for many. When we're talking about, you were talking about having a teacher that was able to reach the students in different ways. And that can be replicated in the workforce, where there's people who are going to pick up things and learn in different ways. When we have that approach for everyone, people don't actually have to come out and ask for extra support. If we're already leading with the idea that we can be creative, that we don't have to do everything the same way all the time. And I use the example of automatic doors in a building. So I'm sure many of you have used, push the button and open the door, even though you're not a wheelchair user, right? 100%, I'm sure. So that's something that was not created for people who aren't wheelchair users, right? But it benefits everyone, and it's a simple change that allows access to everyone. So now people who have stuff in their hands, bags in their hands, people who are pushing a baby carriage, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And that's the point. It doesn't actually matter what the person's need is. It's one solution that works for many, most actually, almost all.